Hi everyone, welcome back to another MetaTrader programming language. We're working on our trailing stop EA. And if you remember, just to recap on what we did last time, we worked on this function here, modify order stop loss, and changed it so that it only actually tries to modify the stop loss if it is actually different, to avoid errors that the server complains if the stop loss isn't different. Now you remember I also pointed out that the code as it stands at the moment is very inefficient in that we are calling this function every single tick, whereas because we're using an n-bar trailing stop, we actually only want to call it every time the bar changes. And the homework was, how can you modify the code so that you only actually call this every time the bar changes? Now the key to do this, I can't remember whether I gave you a clue or not, is to look at the time variable. Now, if we just F1 on time, you see it's got a type which is date time, which is the number of seconds since the 1st of January 1970. Okay, so a rather strange way of representing time, and there are ways of converting it to more sensible numbers, but all you need to know is that this is it's a count of the number of seconds, and every new bar will have a new time. Okay, and the way these things are referenced, that is the nearest bar. This is 1 bar ago, this is 2 bars ago, and so on. So we want the nearest bar, and we basically want to say something along the lines of if the last time, which I'll tell you what it is in a moment, equals, remember if you're doing comparisons it's 2 equal sign, time naught, then return. So basically saying if the time hasn't changed, then we don't want to do anything else. Okay. So now what is this last time variable? What we want to do here is clearly store the last value we had. Okay, so we do something like last time equals time naught. Okay, so basically if it's different, then we've got to update our last time variable, so it's storing the current value of the time, and then we can carry on and modify our trailing stop. Okay, so we need to define this variable somewhere. Now the key thing is that this variable has to persist, has to carry on existing in between calls to onTick. It's no good just creating it every time on tick, because we'll lose it at the end of that. Now this is to do something called scope, which I think I've talked about before, but I'll just mention again. If I, for example, were to define date last time here, then its scope is said to be only within these squiggly brackets here. What that means is it can only be seen and referenced within these squiggly brackets, and also once you leave the squiggly brackets, i.e. once we've finished the onTick function, then this is deleted. So it's obviously no good to us because we want it to persist between calls. So what you need to do is take it and stick it up here. Now these are what's known as global variables. Now they're not to be confused with the global variables you get here. These global variables are ones which can be accessed across different charts, and they're very useful. But these are global variables in the programming sense, that the scope exists throughout all the functions within this one page. Okay, so all the functions here, they can all see this thing. Now you should never declare a global variable without setting it to initial value. Let's just set it to 0. So this is the 1st of January 1970. So it's important you set it to initial value, because when you start using it here, you need to know that it actually did have something sensible to start with. Okay, it can be anything as long as it's not the value of the first bar that you're about to expect. So we set it to some silly value, then the first time we call this, it'll be different, so we'll set it to the last bar and we'll call our function. Thereafter, the next tick, last time that will be the same, and it will return. And it'll keep on returning and not doing anything else until the time naught changes. So this is exactly the behavior that we want. Okay, so let's just check that compiles. It does, and just check it works. So let's just check we're on demo account. That's switched on. Let's go to a 1 minute chart. Just make it a bit easier. See what's going on. Let's just sell some there. So I think this demo unfortunately is a bit slow, because brokers often don't use they sort of overload their servers on their demo accounts because they're not very important. So okay, so let's do 5 bar trail, stick that on, and there's our trailing stop Now you can't actually see any difference, but the truth is that we're only calling that function once per bar, which is so loading a lot less. If you really want to know, you can put a little print statement here, just say you're in on tick, and you know, that will prove to you that it's only calling this once. By the way, I haven't mentioned print statements. If you do a print statement, I'll just show you. Something like that. You do something like that, okay, and it comes out under the Experts tab. So you should see, right, if you watch, see the tick, alright, so there's the we're in on tick. Okay, now if you watch the next tick, wait for this to say it's a slow server, so they're not doing, there is another tick. Oh. Okay, I think you may, when you start up, you may get multiple ticks, but you should actually now notice that we're getting ticks here, and we're not getting on tick called. So once it's actually bedded down, you're basically only going to call, this is only going to, we're in on tick is only going to fire up once per bar. Okay, so you see got 24 seconds to the next bar. Should we just see out through the next bar? And what we should see, we're doing 5 bar trail, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It should tighten up to there. And we should get a new we're in on tick. So we've got 9 seconds to go. So it's a slow server, so ticks are a bit clumpy. There we are. New we're on tick, and you see there's the modifier statement saying we're changing our stop, and there it's changed. So there we go. Now I'll show you the next problem with this thing, and this will be the homework for the next one. If I close this position out now, and what you notice is the trailing stop is still there. And so if I sell this again, what you'll see, and I say when the server finally catches up, which will be a little slow, it'll put the stop straight back in there. Now you may want that, but you may not. And the problem is, say it's a bit slow to catch up, the problem is that you don't want to get caught out with forgetting that you've left your trailing stop EA in there once you've closed out a position, or once the position's been stopped out on the trail. So what it is being remarkably slow to put this in, but it will do. What you want, there it goes. What you want to do is to, in fact, that was the reason why, because it was waiting for the next bar before putting it in. Do a little alert to remind you that your trailing stop is still there, but there's no positions anymore. Okay, so that's your homework for the next one, and see if you can work out how to do that. Okay, so I'll close that out, and I'll remove the EA. Okay, so there we go. That's your homework. As always, any questions or feedback, do please let me know. Okay, thanks then. Bye for now.